Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Leo?
Good morning, my friend. I'm very well. How the devil are you?
I'm very good too. Really, really good.
Sun shining. Good weather in Annecy.
Sun is out for the first time in a while. It's good weather. It's
Nice.
warm. I'm really excited to get outside and enjoy.
Summer, isn't it? Summer's arrived, my
Yeah.
friend. Now, I know you've been smashing it recently. Up early, jogging, yoga, paddleboard, everything. There's no stopping you. What have you done this morning before you had coffee?
Nothing. I didn't do any of that. It's been a
I set
tough
you
week.
up, didn't
I actually had a long weekend in the southwest of France where I went surfing. But it was great. I loved it. The conditions weren't great. The waves were a bit too big and crazy, but it was a fun weekend, but it's 10 hours away. So I got back on Sunday night at like 1 a.m., which just was a terrible start to the week, essentially. So yeah, I have not done anything, like no sport this week, nothing, but I'm doing it after this episode. So I'm going to get back into it after.
When we say Southwest France, Biarritz kind of way? Is that where you surf?
Lacanau.
Okay, nice.
It's near Bordeaux.
Okay, scary waves, but did you manage to stand up?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Well, yeah, but so the scary wave days, we stayed in the foam, so it was a bit, bit boring. But it was funny.
I live in the foam.
It was definitely a fun weekend.
Yeah, I've only ever done it on a foam surfboard in the foam. That's the only bit I've got to. Okay. And I'd love to do more of it actually. Maybe you can take me at some point. I would love to do more. I really like it as a hobby. I've got terrible posture though, so I feel like my partner always teases me for this. I feel like I'm hunched. You met me in person, right? Am I a huncher?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what she means. Yeah. I can see it a little bit.
So if you're a huncher, you get on a surfboard and you just go straight off.
Yeah, I guess. I guess you're right. Gonna have to work on that. And we can go for a trip.
Yeah, it does. I've got to work on the posture, but she's been on at me for years about the posture. I'm trying, but it's so hard. It's so hard. Anyway, enough of me complaining. That sounds fun. That sounds like a really nice thing that you've been up to. We've just been chilling, really, family time, watching sport. And I'm staring down the barrel of, I think, touch wood, not having to do any work travel until October, which feels pretty nice, given how much we usually do. So, I mean, sure, something will come up, or I'll probably hit Barcelona to see our team over there, but no significant long haul work travel for a while. So I'm just kind of enjoying that. Like, I feel like summer's here. When do you go on holiday?
I actually leave next week.
Oh, nice. Remind me where you're going.
Brittany. I'm staying in France. Yeah, but I'm going to go kite surfing. So
very sensible. Staying in a vacation rental?
Grandparents.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm going to go with my cousin and we're going to try to get some kite surfing in together.
Love that. Well, look, we're still, I think the news of the short-term rental ban at the end of 2028, beginning of 2029, announced by the Barcelona mayor is still very much being talked about this week. We've not moved on from seismic news. Rafi, we didn't have you last week. A lot of it's going to come up, I guess, this week. But yeah, apart from that obvious shock, what else has caught your eye this week?
Yeah, so there's an announcement that Hostaway is launching a dynamic pricing tool for property managers. It's really interesting. They're basically saying that you have the potential to earn 10 to 40% more revenue per listing with this tool. And it uses billions of data points across millions of units worldwide. And it even goes as far as differentiating between different types of rentals. So it can help out managers who are managing cabins, tree houses, apartments, chalets. So yeah, interesting piece of news there. It made me think of, we're actually also trying to develop our own dynamic pricing tool for our owners so that they can optimize their own pricing as well. I think it's really great to give those tools to the people that are managing all of that themselves and empower them really to manage the properties more professionally.
Do you generally let your host pick their own price then, or do you recommend, but they can have final say?
So we will recommend pricing, because at the end of the day, we do have access to all of the data, but they get to choose at the end of the day what pricing they want.
Yeah. It's an interesting way. It's good because I guess you can say, well, look, if you had priced the way we'd suggested, potentially this is what could have happened. I guess the hard way, don't they? No, I agree. I think the host way needs to be interesting. We're at this point, aren't we, where they're really well backed financially. The ones that are well backed, the PMSs, are building more, and I assume there's lots of clients who work with a PMS that love in-house development by their PMS, because it means they don't have to go to various vendors to get what they need. Whilst there is still obviously a use case for those vendors those customers are very specific about the vendors they use. So I don't think it's the end of the marketplace model that exists within PMSs, right, where different vendors do an API connection and get access to the client, because I think there's always going to be that use case. But clearly there's I won't say lazy, it's not lazy, but there's the guys who want it all in one place that will say, great, well, I'll just get the off-the-shelf version, even if it doesn't have all the benefits. So I think this is one to watch. I'm sure we're going to see more of this, and we're going to find more of these announcements as the well-backed PMSs start to either eat other businesses, buy, acquire other businesses, and then also think about building their own software. So yeah, this came to me as one of the interesting things this week as well. One I found in my browsing, which was a little bit left field, but I thought this was cool. I think you'll like this as well, being in France. It's the merger of two. They're called micro camping websites. So one brand called Home Camper, the other called Camp Space. One of them based in France, one based Benelux, and sort of slightly more north in Europe, have come together, and that really gives them the lion's share of the market. And what they class as a micro campsite is a host giving their garden or their little extra bit of the field they have. So it's got quite a lot of that marketplace model behind it. Now, the reason why I think it's interesting is we're going to talk a lot about regulation and over tourism. We've spent all summer talking about it, it feels like, and sustainability. And, I just think that the trends here are that lots of people are thinking about their carbon footprint when they go away and how they can go away causing without adding to the crowds. And this feels like a vertical that probably will have a really good 12 months to 2 years. So I think it's one to watch. It's not strictly SDR, but it's certainly going to take guests away from SDR properties, and it's certainly going to interest SDR hosts that have fields and space outside their property. So I'm going to put this down as a one to watch. So yeah, Home Camper and Camp Space. Yeah. Have you done it, Rafi? Have you camped in someone's garden before?
No, I don't know if I mean, yeah, I don't know if I would. It's interesting concept, but it definitely does go in the right direction when it comes to sustainability and over tourism and all that. I definitely hear that. I guess worth a try. Have you?
Yeah, I think it's more camper vanning as well. I really do. I think it's a camper van rather than pitching a tent. Realistically, because you're not going to have any of the amenities you need like on site. So I'm sure you do on some of the fields, but I think it's more campsites. I've got a real dream that one day we'll buy a camper van and we'll do it. Now I know what's going to happen. My kids are going to be older and they're going to want nothing else. They're going to not want to go on holiday with me, right? That's going to be the truth, right? Like Dad's just cleaning the camper van again and we're off to France. But like for me, it's a dream I have that we'll pack the kids up and we'll do it. So yeah, I definitely think so. And I think, again, because of some of the things that are going on in the industry, I think rural, coastal, secluded, away from the crowd, it is having a moment, and people are seeing the appeal of that. Plus, we live in a really busy urban area, like we're Zone 2 London. I walk out of my door and it's like, poof, we're on straight away. We're not in a quiet part of town. So when we're going on holiday, I think we do seek a little bit more refuge and quiet time because we live in the buzz of a city.
Yeah, I think you still have time with the kids. Kids tend to love that kind of thing, right?
I've got to go quick though, haven't I? I mean, I can't
up to a certain age, but yeah.
Yeah. I think I've got a few years. Yeah, I hope. Yeah, no, I need to do it. I need to just bloody do it. Right, keep me honest, Rafi. Keep me on the keep me on straight and narrow with that. Great. There are highlights. There's some interesting data going on as well at the moment around how the summer's going, how the summer's progressing. We'll wait till we get Sarah back She's holidaying in Malta at the moment, I believe. Lucky Sarah. So we'll wait till we get Sarah back, and we'll dig a bit more into that. I've been reading some conflicting views on how the summer's going in the UK, so hopefully she can find some more data about that. I doubt the weather's particularly helped. It's because it hasn't heated up until this point. I know some of Europe's the same, but we're now starting to see that trend change. So yeah, we'll get Sarah in on that. Rafi, you're going to start us off. We're talking about this article from FocusWire. The SDR industry is evolving but remains ripe for opportunity. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so this was actually a panel that happened during the FocusWire conference in Europe. And essentially, they were talking about sort of the challenges that we're facing, but within those challenges, there are opportunities out there for our industry. So in terms of challenges, we have high interest rates currently, plus increased regulations, which is having an effect on supply. And also some owners, are finding it difficult to sell properties that they own due to also these increased interest rates, which could be an opportunity for us actually to try and sell them on the idea of creating a short-term rental out of this property that they're not using. But overall, what we're seeing is there's a projected growth in gross bookings, which are projected to reach $203 billion this year. So definitely opportunities here. In terms of the opportunities that were discussed, as a general overview, there is standardization in our industry whilst also maintaining the unique experience for guests. I know that we talked about this in a previous episode a couple of weeks ago, but I always find it a really interesting topic. There are things that still need to be put in place in our industry, which are necessary and that will not necessarily affect the unique experience for the guests, which I know that is still very much valued in our industry. Things like the star system, we don't really have any standardized star system, just like the hotel industry. Also, sustainability standards need to be put in place. And yeah, just generally higher professionalization in our industry and putting more emphasis on amenities and just basically ensuring that whilst we know that our guests want something more unique as opposed to what they would find in hotels, we also need to make sure that they know what to expect when they're staying in a short-term rental industry, and that there aren't any bad surprises. So I think that that's something that we all still need to really work on in this industry. Another opportunity would be owner support and consulting. So someone in the panel was saying that actually, we're not really placing enough focus on empowering owners to provide a more professional service. So offering consulting for owners on how to optimize their rentals, providing dynamic pricing tools, educating them on aspects of the industry that could really help them optimize the performance. All of these things are things that we can probably do better at as well. I found that interesting. I haven't really heard much about that angle in terms of how we can improve as an industry. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that one afterwards, Leo, whether or not you think that we're doing more, if we're doing enough for owners currently. Be interested. The other opportunity is diversification and niche markets. So the regulations, over tourism, climate change, all of that means that there is going to be an increased interest for areas off the beaten track. So like you were saying, more coastal and rural areas, plenty of opportunities to offer accommodation there. And then themed properties. I mean, we're seeing, all the tree houses and the camping, all of those different things. Themed properties are definitely going to be coming in more and more. And we're definitely seeing as well an expanding market in terms of types of properties. So properties that fall in between traditional hotels and short-term rentals, but also that are, more midterm stays. There are blurred lines that are happening also between, our industry, the long-term rental industry, or the long-term rentals, and also our industry and the hotel industry. And finally, flexible booking policies. I think we can probably do more when it comes to flexible cancellations. I'm thinking much more about our niche products, so larger, higher end properties, not necessarily chalets, but all types of properties that are more higher end. I think the cancellation policies there are still quite strict, and definitely opportunities there to expand that.
I think that's right on the cancellation point. Someone needs to create something. Watch this space. But I think it's it's really, really hard for operators, right? And because when I say operators, I mean hosts, property managers, co-hosts, because your owner believes as soon as the booking is taken, they've started to spend the money. You must get that. You must experience that, right? So they don't
Yeah.
have a really flexible cancellation policy because it's money in the bank. And if you get a last minute cancellation, wow, it's a killer, isn't it? Especially at a peak time of year. So that is a contentious one. But clearly the hotel, and let's for a minute compare ourselves to hotels because it's relevant, I think, is the hotel just puts you in another room. Worst case, puts you in a hotel around the corner, but realistically, it's a hotel room. But the uniqueness point, people fall in love with the property that they've booked. So if they get cancelled on by the owner, it's very disappointing. And if they cancel for the owner's point, it's very disappointing for them. So, I obviously got my start in vacation rental at One Fine Stay. I've mentioned this before, 2011, 2012, and it was last minute relocations, doorstep relocations, and cancellations were we had a whole team of people trying to work on them. They were such a pain, and it just kills your ability to like get consistent 5-star reviews, deliver that top level of service. So let's go back to this idea that there's opportunity in short-term rentals. The market's going to continue to grow, right? Globally, there's a wobble going on. People aren't spending as much money potentially, but the economy will pick up. This industry is set to grow in size, of course. I do think the property manager that can and host that continually focuses on making their properties as unique as possible, stands out against the competition, is going to get more bookings in this market, because there is, I think, even when the demand comes back, the supply, I think we're always going to be slightly for the next couple of years, slightly further ahead in supply than we are with demand. And therefore you have to do something to stand out. Whether you are a local operator, whether you're an individual host, or whether you're a global brand or a national property management brand. But keeping those guests is challenging when they've come to something that's unique and high end, and then you forget the towels. And so what goes alongside unique property is a high level of service. There's an expectation, and the better you make your homes, the expectation is the better the service delivery will be. So I think that's a really interesting challenge for the industry to address and keep addressing. I always say this: we have to think of ourselves as an industry as trying to get a guest to come away from the hotel world and try us. And then to get them to come back, we have to make sure that the service that we offer is so professional and thoughtful that they do start thinking about STR as being an alternative for certain use cases. Now, maybe when they're traveling for work, they're always going to stay in a hotel. Maybe when they travel with their wider family, everyone's going to get a hotel room and they're going to go to the resort they always go to. But it'll add STR into their travel sort of the year. 1 or 2 of their trips become that.
I think from my experience, actually, when I'll stay in short-term rentals and then I'll stay in hotels. And there's always sort of like this feeling of like, when I stay in a hotel, just because there is that sort of, I don't know, like the standard level of, amenities, quality and stuff that that you can expect and that you will get, that we just don't have in our industry. And things like, hair dryers, or, am I going to get, a strong enough Wi-Fi, things like that. Like, these are things that we need to just be able to allow our travelers, our guests, to expect as well, without having to look through all of the details and spend hours researching for those little details that at the end of the day should just be in the properties regardless. And I think that's something that, can definitely still be worked on.
You're completely right. I mean, that's where my mind goes to, that is talking about like professionalization, giving a quality of service and standard of what's in the property, and also these blurred lines that we're talking about. So, one of the advantages of the short-term rental over the hotel is that you can stay there longer and make your own breakfast, but you've got to then have the I can't believe I'm saying this is ironic. You've got to have the hairdryer in play, and you've got to have the Wi-Fi's got to be really good, because then people are going to start working and living. And often that use case isn't even thought about, right? So there's basic things: salt, pepper, oil, enough cooking utensils, all that sort of stuff. You have the chance to convert that guest, but you've got to be thoughtful in the preparation.
Yeah. But I appreciate it's complicated because we offer a full house or a full apartment, whereas hotels just have a room. So it's easier to just take care of all the basic amenities. Whereas for us, we have to think about everything. We have to think of all the rooms, the kitchen is alone is complicated enough with all the different tools that we need to provide.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenge, isn't it? But I guess to think about where the opportunity is, you asked me for my view on the owner consultation and whether we're doing enough to educate owners. That
Mm.
all plays into that, right? Which is,
Yeah.
and I think the angle you're asking me from is if you're a short-term rental property manager or co-host, right? So are you properly instructing your owners on how to set up your property for success? Is that the question?
Yeah. Are we doing that enough as an industry?
No.
Are we providing them with all those tools necessary to really, set themselves up for success? Exactly.
Yeah, I think not. I think it's really hard. Now, sorry, can I just say, I'm sure there are really good examples of this, and anyone listening at home who's got them, like email in, send them. You know, we can touch back on this in future episodes or put them in the comments below. Is that you're trying to win the deal. Often if you're co-hosting, you know, if your growth model is that you manage other people's properties, not arbitrage or own, you're trying to win the dealing spot, aren't you? And so you want to beat your competitor. So you kind of want to be as facilitative as possible with your owner and say, you know, your home's amazing, we're going to make you so much money. And I think it's hard to then say to that owner, you need to clean the skirting boards more regularly, you need to paint the skirting boards more regularly, you need to make sure there's pool chemical available because the pool went green the last guest that was there. You need to do. It's hard, right? It's hard. And I think potentially people that work in rural, coastal, or short-term rental towns maybe have an easier job with their hosts because they take on more of that full scale property management. So they almost, that becomes part of their bundle, right? We will change the pool chemical, we will do this, and we will charge for it. And that's also something to think about, right? When you're thinking about your growth model is there more service I could be offering my hosts? You know, because actually someone's got to do this work and maybe I should just be doing it. Because the other thing is, of course, you could consult and recommend, but it's probably more beneficial if the home is not being used very often by the host and they're not there to just take control of that yourself. But potentially that's the option. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think that the one thing is that there are always going to be so many owners or hosts on Airbnb on the OTAs and that are just doing themselves, that are not going to be, getting that full service that some other companies offer. And in that case, if we're talking about professionalization and standardization, we do definitely need to educate those people too. And I mean, that is probably on the OTAs, but there's definitely more that can be done on that front to improve our industry as a whole when it comes to all of that.
Yeah, interesting. So the no barrier to entry element of the industry is fantastic for growth, but it's then also it's a no barrier to entry, which means the quality control goes down, right? And I don't think that that might not necessarily even be anything to do with an individual host versus a big company. It's just a quality control thing. You might have a big company who's doing it pretty badly and an individual host that's throwing everything into it.
Yeah.
But there's that quality control element. And I wonder now, I think travelers are a bit more sophisticated in terms of how they view Airbnb. But I think let's use Airbnb as the example because they're the biggest OTA. Is that I think when people first started using Airbnb as an OTA, they thought that they'd done the curation for them and they didn't have to worry. That it's like, oh, it's an Airbnb, and then I think that perception has now gone, which maybe makes people head towards being a bit savvier, right? Looking for a direct booking website. If you are traveling to the Alps and you're looking for a niche travel, you look at something like OVO Network, right? And you find them and you look for that specifically because somebody's curated it. And I think let's think about who every property manager wants to get the person who's never stayed in a vacation rental before and has always stayed with Marriott and has got really high standards. And what that person is going to want is customization and that. So I always think that they're going to rub up against an OTA, a broad-based OTA, because they can't. There's no Marriott gold standard for them as they walk in the door. And again, that herein is the challenge we have as an industry. Okay, so I'm going to go through our second article. This is one from FocusWire. Education is necessary for travelers to play a bigger role in mitigating over tourism. Here we are, Rafi. We're on the over tourism point. The article outlining over-tourism and sustainability are inherently linked. It's one factor that not all travelers understand. Very good point. I'm thinking of Vanessa at Sestonica and Bob at Enviro Rentals, trying to push that narrative out to people. But, the article is outlining that operators really need to help educate their guests on this. And I think as a critique of STR, we should be doing more, and we can't pretend it's not happening. Let's think about this phenomenon of over-tourism a little bit more. We've talked about it a lot, but this amazing cultural shift that's happened in parts of Europe, especially parts of the Mediterranean, let's focus on, where tourism has been such an important part of the local economy and regional economy that it's hard to believe. You wouldn't have thought 5 to 10 years ago that people would have been against tourists coming. But clearly, as globally, we've had a huge growth in the middle class, and deregulation of the airline industry in the 1970s. I'm not an expert on that, but deregulation of the airline industry, making flights cheaper, and this continually growing middle class with the money in their pockets come from India, China, European middle class growing. We seem to have reached potentially every summer now, it comes up time and time again. We seem to have reached a pinch point. It's hard to believe that we're only 4 years out of COVID, 3 or 4 years out of COVID, where no one was going anywhere, and already we've hit this point where people are anti-tourists. And it's talking about, this article's talking about how, as travelers and as operators, we need to be sort of trying to de-seasonalize our markets somewhat. I'll let you come back on that point in a second, because I know that's something that you think about a lot in your business. But it's de-seasonalizing, trying to promote smaller towns in your region, which I mentioned last week when we were talking about Barcelona, right? Eventually, in the context here of crowds, if the crowds are rotten, you end up booking your next holiday down the coast or further away, and new areas come up, and people start talking about them as being the new area to go to because no one wants the crowds. Here they're saying, a very good option is to kind of avoid the cruise ship crowds, and that's I think what they're generally considered to be the worst for your city, because they come in and they go and they eat on their ship. And then take a really practical approach to your town planning. Again, this bleeds into the Barcelona discussion, but they talk about here this concept of density mapping, which is really, really interesting. I'm reading a good book on this at the moment, actually, which I will share in the comments about how we view ourselves as tourists. It's really interesting. This point on density mapping, though, the idea that really city planners need to go through grid by grid and see where people are, where the hotels are, see where the short-term rentals are, and see where the tourist attractions are. Because we had Sarah last week, who's a Barcelona resident, saying there's parts of Barcelona I just never go into because they're just completely overrun. Sensible town planning, I'm not saying it's easy, but sensible town planning would say, well, okay, I'm going to encourage more STRs, say, in these areas because we don't have enough here. Let's give licenses here, and let's push people out to these parts to try and bring tourists into this area, and try and alleviate some of the burden. Because yes, we talk about over tourism like there's nothing we can do about it, but of course there is. Like they're not going to be in every street in every city. It probably just needs more practical solutions, and we have to accept that it's a problem, and we need to then work to address it. And we as SDR people, I think, need to be working with policymakers wherever we can and helping find some of the solutions. I think when you look at trends, it's pretty obvious that the rural and the coastal are here to stay. And you can see we've focused on Holidoo's partnerships and acquisitions a few times, one of them being that rural OTA in Spain, and then the rural one in France as well. That is a direct play to try and not contribute, I think, increasingly to this over tourism phenomenon, and just give, maybe you do arrive in the city for a couple of days, but then you hop into the countryside, right? So you're not spending your week in the city. A lot to unpack there. Rafi, what do you think?
Yeah, like you say, there's a lot to unpack, so much to talk about. I'm just going to go straight to sort of the main points that I took from this article, which is, I think I would say on one hand, there's definitely something that needs to be done in terms of making sure travelers are aware of what they're getting into. Because, for example, social media, I think social media has its role that it's playing within all of this. Any traveler, I mean, I'm included myself, right? you don't tend to post the photos of the main tourist attraction surrounded by huge crowds, right? You'll post, the pretty view where there's no one in sight. Like you're not going to post the negative aspects of your trip. But what that does is I guess it kind of creates like unconsciously this impression that, oh, okay, the destination I'm going to, based on the photos that I've seen and the information I got, sounds great. And it's almost like you don't even worry about the potential crowds. But then you get there and then you realize it's too late, right? So I think there's one aspect of like really trying to create way more transparency around the reality of the destination that you're planning your trip around. And also trying to maybe get people to connect a lot more to the destination that they're about to visit. And I think that comes at a really, really early stage. It comes at like the inspirational planning stage of planning a trip, right? And that would be, just making sure that people, I don't know, get access to stories of locals, that they understand the culture, they understand sort of like how people function in that place and why, and all of these things, like little anecdotes, things like that, that can really help travelers connect to the place that they're about to travel to. And then I think that will then allow them to respect the place a bit more and travel more consciously. Then on the other hand, I think that, the local authorities, the governments, all of that, there's quite a lot that we can do when it comes to, I guess, first attracting the right travelers. There's something that we can actually be more proactive in terms of like, well, what kind of travelers are we trying to attract? There's communication around that, but then also the infrastructure. So like if you're saying, go to a city, but then take some time off of your trip to go into a more rural location. Well, these travelers need a way to get there, and it needs to be convenient. It needs to be easy. It needs to be, easy to find, all of that. And so I think that there are those two things at play, right? Like there's definitely an education for the travelers, but there's also the whole setup to make all of that much more, I guess, it's just easier for the travelers to actually travel in the way that we want them to travel.
I agree with all of that. And I think we in the space and as operators do have a responsibility to try and drive that behavior through the content that we create. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's something that we're actually thinking a lot about at the moment, right now, and trying to get a bit more creative on how we can, sell the mountains as our example year round, because there's definitely a lot that you can do year round in the mountains aside from just the winter.
Very interesting. We're out of time, my friend. We will talk more about this. I think these themes are going to keep coming up all summer. We'll have Sarah and Damien with us at different points as well. So I know this will keep coming up. But okay, that's all we've got time for this week. Rafi, great to see you, my friend. Have a lovely day.
Great to see you too, Leo.
Am I seeing you next week? Are you already on holiday?
I'll be on holiday.
Oh, terrible news. Terrible news for me. Okay, my friend. Yeah, lovely catching up with you. Again, we'll come back to these themes, I'm sure, again and again over the summer. If you've enjoyed the episode, please hit like, share, comment, tell us what you think so we can do more of it. Thanks very much.